How do we handle conflict? Stories present various types of conflicts we encounter in life, and specifically, films give us space to imagine how these conflicts manifest in our lives and how we can better navigate them. On today's episode of the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, we continue our venture into the Planet of the Apes series through the 2010s prequel trilogy. For a long time, I refused to see this critically acclaimed trilogy because I held the original in such high regard and couldn't comprehend the era of CGI blockbusters producing something worthwhile. But boy, was I wrong. Not only is this some of the best motion capture CGI you'll ever see, it's a profoundly deep narrative that wrestles with different conflicts that we encounter in the human experience. Conflicts we can all relate to, because unlike the original, that deals with the ape potential within humans, these films ask if it's not necessarily the ape part of us that needs to be put in check, but rather the higher level parts of our consciousness that reduce us to savage beasts and are at the source of many of our conflicts. In the first two films, the main type of conflicts we see are us versus nature and us versus them. Along with these, both films compel us to ask, when do we stand up for ourselves and advocate for the rights of others? And how do we deal with opposition, both from within and without? If you're ready to dive into these conflicts head on, then join us for this discussion on the rise and the dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Welcome to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, where we analyze stories and films that help us make sense of life. We are four friends with backgrounds in storytelling, filmmaking, teaching, and narrative therapy. Join us on our quest towards telling and living our stories more meaningfully. I'm Derek Hatch.
My name is Nick Natal.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Wilson.
I'm Jason Lin.
I will say this controversial topic or statement. I think this trilogy is better than the Dark Knight trilogy.
I don't think it's that controversial.
I actually don't think it's that.
The Dark Knight has the best movie.
I agree.
But as a trilogy, I think
I do think this is a stronger trilogy than the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah.
Like putting Batman Begins to Rise is better.
Yeah.
Putting War to Dark Knight Rises, War is definitely better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Putting Dawn
Dark loses,
Knight.
but still.
But it's a gracious loss.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it's not even the same. This is more of like the same continuation of a story.
Well, that's
right. Not really.
It's his story up to the end, just like Caesar.
How does Rise end, or Dark Knight Rises end?
Dark Knight Rises. That's with Bane, right? That's him in the cafe after the.
Okay, so it does work like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's whack. That's super whack.
yeah. He ends up in the cafe. Caesar dies like a thug.
Batman dies, but
Caesar's way better than Christian Bale's Batman. The character, at least, in these iterations.
So I want to start off with this quote. It comes from a book, I have it here on the table, called Confessions of a Christian Humanist. And it says, the stories we tell, whether about ourselves or about others, reveal how we see life and understand what it means to be human. So as we're talking about these three films, I want you guys and the listeners here to keep that in the forefront of your mind, that these stories are ultimately trying to reveal, how do we ultimately see life? What is the pulse that it's taking on where we're at as a human civilization? And then what do we understand about humanity, what it means to be human, right? And so I think these three films are going to really tell an incredible story that some of us might debate which ones are the best of those, right? Which pieces, but I think they work together to tell something really compelling and meaningful. So we're going to go through them in order. So we will start with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is a story about finding liberation. So here we go. Here's the letterboxd. Evolution becomes revolution. Scientist Will Rodman is determined to find a cure for Alzheimer's, the disease which has slowly consumed his father. Will feels certain he is close to a breakthrough and tests his latest serum on apes, noticing dramatic increases in intelligence and brain activity in the primate subjects, especially Caesar, his pet chimpanzee. So
he's not a pet.
Yeah, he's not a pet.
Yeah, that was the best scene in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
One of.
Yeah. What am
is
I?
Caesar?
Yeah.
What is
He
Caesar?
sits in the back seat and not the trunk.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so good.
It's
that
so
was
good.
Great.
What I think really sets this series apart from a lot of other series out there is that this actually did not come from the top. This did not come from a producer at 20th Century Fox who said, we should make more of those apes movies. Yeah. They actually really...
Barton Fink, Coen Brothers, Hollywood.
Yes. Thank you for catching that reference. They actually
sounded funny.
They actually had no desire to ever touch this series again.
After the Tim Burton one?
Yeah, after the Tim Burton one really bombed.
Again, I will stick by it. It's a pretty decent apes movie.
Not worthy of a podcast.
Notice how we're not talking about that.
I talked about it. I brought it up in the podcast twice.
But anyways,
we need to make a Monkey Planet movie.
Yeah. That should be our first movie.
Such a ridiculous title.
So this actually came from a guy named Rick Jaffa, who had this idea after researching how chimps tend to turn on their owners, right? How does that happen? Those who had those monkeys as pets, what
Michael
happens
Jackson.
when they try to turn? Yeah. So it's interesting because it comes from somebody who loves this story and wanted to tell. He thought he had a new thing that he could bring to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much love in all three of these films for the original, right? There is such a reverence for them, but it also is not afraid to try to tell its own story, right? And I think that's why it works so well. It's the best of both worlds. And Rise is really about reversals.
Mm-hmm.
You start off like any movie, you're introduced to human characters. You see James Franco, and I'm not really a big James Franco guy. I just don't like him as an actor. But, he's trying to develop a cure for Alzheimer's, which I'll get behind that any day for those who know my story. So we're on his side. We want to see this cure happen. But there's this weird reversal that takes place as you're watching Rise, where you start to less and less empathize with him. And you start to more and more be connected with Caesar, the monkey that he's adopting, right? The chimpanzee he's adopting.
But that's not even the first scene that we see humans in. The beginning is like the reversal of the chase scene in the original Planet of the Apes with the humans in the field, but the apes are in the field, and the humans are coming to take them.
Right.
So it's a complete reversal of that. You're seeing the humans as the apes were in the beginning.
Yes. Good.
The original one. Yeah.
Yeah. All reversals in this movie. Everything is a reversal in some way of the original. Even when you get to understand Caesar, you get to see what's called like the psychology of oppression. And there's a great YouTuber, his name is Story Street. I got to give him a lot of credit for a lot of these insights on the three films we're going to talk about. So some of this comes from him. But, the psychology of oppression is that when you try to make something believe that they are lesser than what they actually are. So Caesar is starting to develop this consciousness, right? Maybe he's more. And Will is starting to treat him like he's more. And you start to see, you want this relationship to work so badly. But then there's the moment where Caesar gets defensive.
Yeah.
And he attacks that guy in the middle of like the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, all people will see him as is
the chimp,
that chimp, that animal there. And this is where the movie really picks up for me once he starts to go to that ape kind of.
Yeah.
Seen as like a sanctuary. Like, this isn't going to be so bad, right? But then it's an illusion.
Yeah, he was like, at that point, like Will is still the only person he trusts. So him leading him into into the cage, I'm heartbroken now that you've left me into this. This is a fake sunshine. What are these walls?
Yeah.
Why are you leaving me? Andy Serkis plays that
Oh
so
my gosh.
Like
Andy Serkis.
He is a great Caesar. Like you can believe all of the emotion through his eyes. Caesar is not even talking during at this point, but it's his eyes, it's emotions.
The technology, the motion capture to really get that.
Yeah.
For
Andy
him,
Serkis isn't even there. Oh, I'm sorry.
But he is there, right? Like that's the beauty of it is he is there, and it brings so much humanity and emotion to an animal.
Caesar is the most human in all of these movies.
100%. 100%. He's more human than the humans are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have Caesar, he's having this taken away from him. And there's this image in Rise of like the window to the outside world, right?
Yeah.
So Caesar's got that room where he's looking out the window. and there's something more he's longing for. He wants that freedom. When he's in that, like, basically prison, he draws the window, right? Because that's all he has. He's just holding on to that little glimmer of something there.
But when Will comes back and isn't able to take him the second time, he erases it with his human shirt.
Yeah.
Erasing the one thing that still ties him to the humans.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone. But then Caesar, through connections with these other apes, starts to realize something. So anyone want to kind of talk about like how that development unfolds?
Well, he's through Maurice, he starts to understand, like, because he even viewed chimps lesser because of his higher intelligence. But through his relationship with Maurice, he understood that, apes and chimps can actually be something else. We can be a unit. We could be a family. Right. And that's why he recruited the big gorilla, because he's like, I need him on my side to try to convince the head ape. What's
Buck is the name of the gorilla.
No, the one that is at the top at the time.
Was that Rocket?
Yeah, Rocket.
Rocket, yeah.
I don't know. Rocket was a little stinker.
Well, yeah, but he had to convince Rocket through it wasn't fear like how Rocket was doing, like as a regular ape.
He did beat Rocket's behind.
He did, but he's like, I'm also showing restraint to you to show you that I'm a gracious king.
Well, Maurice was like, why Cookie Rocket? Like, apes together.
That was such a good part.
Like ape, heart weak, apes together. Strong.
Caesar finds out who he is with the apes.
Yeah.
So if he stays with Franco, he's going to be
lost.
He's going to be oppressed. He's not going to figure out who he is.
Well, when Franco when Will finally comes back, right, and
he can't
is able to get him free, he knows, he closes the door on that.
Yeah.
He knows he can't go back to that.
It's the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, of course, he's had his trust broken by humans. He's recognized that there's a better path forward. And then in another reversal from the original film, the ape speaks and he says,
so good.
Yeah.
No.
And it's the line,
the most defiant word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's just visceral too.
Yeah.
It's like
I remember
scary when it
seeing
comes
that
out.
in the theater for the first time. I was like, because at that point I didn't know anything about Planet of the Apes.
Sure.
I was like, wait. And then when Nancy and I were watching it, her first reaction was like, bruh, like that's wild. Because it's just like, that's the most human thing that separates us from animals. This animal is now doing it.
And that's broken.
Yes, it's broken.
It's
like, and I bet everyone in that theater shut up. When they were talking. That was like,
and it was a brilliant use of the line of "Get your stinking hands off."
Yes,
but also it's delivered terribly.
Yeah.
Terribly, I agree.
That actor's awful.
Wrong person.
Sorry, if you're listening to this podcast, whoever's that actor is, sorry, but.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Harry Potter guy.
Yeah.
At least say Malfoy.
I agree. It was not the best delivery of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, his placement was good because he was very much hateable.
Mm-hmm.
But but then he dies, and you realize the father still lost a son.
Yeah.
Well, and even
William Stryker.
Stryker was also sleazy, so
Yeah.
I like.
Well, and so you get Caesar that is going to get these apes out, but not only is he going to get them out, he's also going to get them the same formula, the same intelligence that he has, right?
Oh, when they're in the cage and they're all sign language, doing like hands. Man, when they're all communicating with each other, he walks by and it's okay. We gotta go back to doing what we got.
Yep.
It was funny because when Caesar does the apes together strong thing, they start fighting, and Maurice goes, "Ape's stupid."
Yep.
He's like, I got it.
And he's like, he's like, oh, you're right.
So they go to the lab, right? Because as good as Will was, as nice as he was to Caesar, at the end of the day, Caesar was still just something that could ultimately benefit mankind, right? He didn't love Caesar just because he loved Caesar. He loved Caesar because he was useful. He could do something, right? And he's just a nice guy to where he's not going to be a dick to him or anything.
Yeah.
But there's a lab where they're not so nice to the apes. And there's a certain ape that's being abused in that lab.
Mm-hmm. We get Koba.
Yep, and we get Koba out of the lab, right?
I watched the Rise. Like, I've seen it before.
Yeah.
And I'm so familiar with Dawn and War, and I went back to watch Rise, and I'm like, oh, that's Koba.
Yep.
I was like, oh, that's Maurice. I was like, oh, the gang is
Yeah, they're foremen.
It's like, then I was like, why would you choose Koba for these trials?
Well,
that's my immediate thought.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even see the other two, but I saw that ape. I'm like, no,
not that one.
Not choose him.
Let's make that one super smart. Like, no, he hates you immediately. Do you see that?
But that's the arrogance and
smart
pride
stuff.
of humanity. They again, even if we give them this intelligence,
Right.
we're still higher in intelligence because we're making them. We're playing God. So,
Well, and Caesar.
No, I think that was a dumb choice.
Oh, yeah,
even
obvious.
us humans.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
that thing is dangerous.
Stay away from that one.
they made a lot of dumb decisions.
looks like he's trouble.
But these humans made a lot of dumb decisions. The guy that got the virus, he didn't immediately go into quarantine.
Oh, no.
He's going around going to people's doors. Doctor, are you?
Rise is good to a point.
Yeah.
Rise is not good.
I want
Yeah.
to see a group of actual lab researchers watch this movie and just go, that would never happen. That
Put
person
your
would
mask
be-
back on. We're just gonna
Uh-huh.
keep going.
Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, the first time I watched these movies was like during like COVID, and it took on a whole different level of meaning
Oh,
in
man,
that
like,
time.
when we get to Dawn and that.
Exactly. But let's wrap up Rise here. So Rise ultimately, they have that scene where the apes are out, right? They're reclaiming their liberation.
Right on the bridge.
Right on the bridge there, the Golden Gate. And then Will extends that hand one more time, but it's not a hand of dominance. Caesar extends it back as a hand of like mutual, like we're on the same level.
Yeah.
Like a man-to-man kind of thing.
Caesar is home.
Yes, yes. But Rise is ultimately...
Weaker. That was the best line. Sorry.
So Rise is ultimately about not depending on others, but forging a path through finding your people, your community, right? And he finds that with the apes, and together they go into the forest, and it seems like, all right, you got what you wanted. The end, right?
Yeah.
No.
It is. It's also kind of wild that like humanity just didn't bomb the forest, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
they
to try to,
just set that junk on fire.
Yeah, to get rid of the apes. But I guess they're also dealing with the virus that killed most of the planet.
We'll get back to the podcast discussion in just a second, but I wanted to ask you, what is it that you would like to see yourself set free from in your life? What sort of narratives are holding you back from being all that you want to be? These could be narratives of feeling inadequate, of feeling incomplete, of feeling like you don't matter. Whatever they are, I believe that trying to get a better understanding of your story, trying to make sense of your story, where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go, can lead us on a path towards figuring out what do we need to be set free from and how do we do so. And if that's something that you're interested in, then reach out to me at allthingsnarrative.com. There's a link here in the show notes, and we can schedule a 30-minute discovery call. And in this time, I want to help give you a sense of clarity in terms of what areas of your story you can focus on growing in. And so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then schedule that discovery call, that link in the show notes. I would love to meet you, would love to connect, would love to listen, hear your story, and see how all things narrative can help you live an even more meaningful story than the one that you find yourself in. All right, back to the conversation. They had their own problems to deal with, which leads us to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Survival rate of that was like 1 to 500, like in survival. That's wild. All right, I'm gonna take a stand up, Derek, right now. Let's go ahead and get into the intro, because the system, my brothers, told us 10 years ago.
Yes.
What was gonna happen? Let me stop. I'm kidding. But no, I like the experience with COVID and watching that beginning scene is like really kind of haunting.
It is
honest.
very haunting. Very, the opening scene.
When I think the dot, and then it's the newscast telling you what happened to the world with the virus.
Right. Yeah.
That was really terrifying.
It is. Dawn has an incredibly effective 2-part opening that it uses. But first, real quick, I'm going to read the letterbox here for this. One last chance for peace. A group of scientists in San Francisco struggle to stay alive in the aftermath of a plague that is wiping out humanity, while Caesar tries to maintain dominance over his community of intelligent apes. So Dawn is an us versus them story. And Rick Jaffa is still involved at this point in the series, but they bring on a different director to make the movie, which is Matt Reeves. So you've got Dawn is part rise and part war, like, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's got the best of these are the two minds of the series, really. Yeah. And they're both joined together for this in a way. So it wasn't completely Reeves's script. It wasn't completely his idea. He brought his take to it, but a lot of Reeves's influence is more in the filmmaking rather than the story and the writing. So when we get to Dawn, you do feel a shift in the narrative, right? I do think the filmmaking does go up a level for sure. Yeah. But the twofold,
like 4 levels.
Yeah.
Filmmaking,
right.
It's a big beautiful difference.
The twofold opening scene here, I think, is really effective. So you've got the almost COVID-esque, right, nightmare of that haunting exposition. And then the next scene is you have 2 apes that are friends. They're divided by a human and a bullet that comes between them. That is effectively this entire movie, because this movie is ultimately about what is going to come between opposing sides, whether that's the humans and the apes or 2 apes themselves, which I think the heart of the movie is the conflict between Caesar and Koba.
Just 2 brothers.
Yeah, just 2 brothers.
Yeah.
And they were brothers.
They were brothers.
They were.
And I was even thinking when I was rewatching it last night that, you know how normally when an ape speaks to Caesar, they have to like do this after they're done speaking. Mm-hmm. When Koba first brought it up to like, we need to be like, have a strong image before they go to the camp. It wasn't that after they speak, they did this. They locked arms with each other.
Yeah.
I thought when they did the hand swipe, that was forgiveness.
I don't know if,
I guess. Permission and forgiveness.
Okay.
This is the hand raised up where the palm up is also a symbol of submission.
Yeah. I took that too.
First of all, the opening scene after the COVID thing is so cool.
Yeah.
It is so quiet and suspenseful. And the thing that is most interesting is that the one who kills the bear and saves Caesar is Koba.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Koba jumps off a mountaintop 30 feet with a spear and slices this bear's head off, basically, and saves Caesar without hesitation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the first mark of Koba's character in the film in general, and that's important for later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would even say with that opening scene, it's not the heart of this movie just isn't the 2, Caesar and Koba, but also Blue Eyes. Like what do you do with the youth? You have Caesar trying to teach his son, Blue Eyes, about like, hey, you need to make sure that you're looking. I'm giving you good advice, but he doesn't want to hear that.
Right.
But when the fun uncle Koba comes and says, scars make you stronger, he's not learning a lesson.
Yeah.
From that. He's learning, okay, well, the goal is to get scars, not to sink.
So brilliant. So well said there. Because in this us versus them, it looks at how does that us versus them mentality, like how does that form, right?
Yeah.
And you have like Uncle Koba, so to speak, and he's, the youth of like Blue Eyes are impressionable.
Yeah.
And Koba is able to use that to his advantage. He's able to project his fear and hatred, because we got to remember that Koba in that first film, he was abused, right? He was tested. He went through it.
Human work. Human work. Human work.
But that is so valid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that is so valid.
Well, and it seems like Caesar believes that Koba can use that to be better, right? He gives Koba the benefit of the doubt that he can.
No,
he dominates Koba.
I'm not talking about I'm talking about in the beginning, like when Caesar initially brings Koba at the end of Rise, into them, right? Yeah. He sees something within him.
Yeah.
But then as we get through the course of Dawn, we realize that Koba has an ideology. That's fear and hatred. That's his own problem, right? Yeah. And yes, it's tragic, but he's projecting that trauma onto other people, and he's using that as almost like trying to justify why
validation. Yeah. And it's a trauma that's been building up for years, and we haven't and he hasn't seen humans in years. So it's like it's something that's never needed to be addressed because the issue never needed to come up.
And I think this is what Caesar's recognizing. Caesar's recognizing that this hasn't been dealt with.
Yeah.
It hasn't been put in check, which is why Caesar is getting more and more aggressive.
But he's also complacent because he believes that apes can't do what humans do, and that's why he's not like, we may just need to put Koba somewhere, because you could see Koba is getting more and more aggressive, but
Yeah, Caesar doesn't handle the problem.
Yeah, he
Right.
Caesar just dominates.
He just dominates.
When he says human work, Caesar stands up above him.
Yeah.
Oh, first of all, it's an amazing scene.
Yeah.
One of just tension and also non-verbal communication.
Right.
But that's Caesar's downfall right there with Koba.
Yeah.
That is the moment that he loses Koba for real.
And then when he beats him, like Caesar's the first one to throw hands with Koba.
Right.
Wait, we're not there yet. We're not there
Yeah.
yet.
Okay, yeah.
So I wanna say, and we're not that either, but I'll say it anyways. I don't care. Caesar does not. It's just what you were saying. Caesar does not expect or think that apes are even possible of reaching the violent potential of humans. So he recognizes that he says that Koba learned hate from humans and nothing else.
Yeah.
Right.
But he doesn't put enough weight on that.
I wonder if he's
addresses it.
Yeah.
Or if he's in denial, and I don't think it's there in the film, but just in general.
See, going back to our conversation about the original Planet of the Apes, this idea of is humanity making progress, right? I think Caesar, I think Caesar is like, he's bought into that myth of progress, but for the apes. He's like, the apes, we're not capable of that. We're going to get better and better, right? And I think this movie is destroying that idea in Caesar's head, right? That apes aren't capable of being that bad. Apes are inherently good. Yeah. Right? I think he truly believes that.
There's another conversation. He says apes fight, but like we're brothers, like we're together, we're a family. And in the beginning, you immediately agree with him because you're like, yeah, look at them. Like, they're all unified together. Like Caesar will do one thing and they all look to him and immediately they move as one.
Well, Caesar is after morality, right? For the apes, a morality that's higher than humans, because it's ironic because like there's a way of being human that is better than human. And that's what Caesar's after. Donald Miller says that morality is enacting the ways of heaven on earth. So Caesar's getting this sense of something higher, and he has this vision for it, right?
He has the vision of the future. That's what he told Koba. Like, how many apes are going to die in your war if we fight this human?
Right.
We have to think of the future.
And what is he before they lock arms? Is that what they're talking about?
No, that is after. What I just said is before. But then it goes up and he says, you freed me. I would follow you to the pretty much I'll follow you to
said that?
Yeah, I'll follow you to the end of the earth, but we have to show strength. And he's like, we will show strength. And then
no kill.
But I was gonna say the opening is really showing both sides. So Caesar is fighting for home and family.
Yeah.
And the very next shot, I think, or the shot before, is Gary Oldman trying to fight for their original position in the world.
Right.
They're fighting for power.
Yeah.
Caesar's fighting for home and family.
Yeah.
And they're right after each other. And I thought it's just a great way to show the difference between those two characters, those two ideologies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And leaders of community.
And when Gary Oldman's character talks to the people, he's not talking to humans.
He's not talking to a family.
He's talking to a group of individuals who are upset.
Right.
Each he'll say something and everyone just interrupts and there's just chatter.
Yeah.
That would never happen in Caesar's camp.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But he's not wrong. And when they pulled up on them, it was like, I don't know what you think you saw up there, but he's like, bro, I saw talking apes. Like, what do you mean?
We all did.
Right.
Yeah. But then when Caesar showed up with the strength and they all pulled up, apes do not want war.
Yes.
And there's a shot where I think it's just the human, Jason, his name in the movie, or Will? I don't know.
Will.
It's the human, but it's behind him, and then you have all the apes on the horses.
Yeah.
I need that in my.
So
if I looked out and saw all of the buildings were with apes on them and all the apes were on
they were on horses.
I would pee a little.
So
I would pee a little.
I think when it comes to the film, like film in general is based on images. And I think this is why the original Planet of the Apes falls, because aside from the ending and the original apes on the horses, the images in that movie don't really stand out, I think, to me.
In which movie?
In the original Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just this like intellectual conversation where you're following along and it's interesting, but the lasting images don't, except for that end, which is like an all-timer. But in Dawn, those images are throughout the movie. So that one image with the human and he's in front of all these apes. Like, this is our power and opposition. Caesar standing over Koba.
Yeah.
And then later in the film, when Koba burns down the village and he's forehead to forehead with Caesar's son.
Yeah.
And it's burning behind him.
Yeah.
Or Koba with the machine gun.
It's
like image after image
after
image is powerful in this film, more so than the three of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you tell a story with film, you have to use image more than dialogue.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't say more. I mean, it's both and, but the image is more.
Yeah. Well, the image is what you really are left with, right?
That's the advantage over the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So play to the strength.
You play to the strength of the medium you're telling the story in. Exactly.
See, but I guess before we go into war, I do want to say that the ideological debates in this movie is what I would have preferred in war as well, in a sense of, because with this debate, it's a us versus them, yes, but are we fighting? Now I feel like with war, it should have shifted to survival. Should we allow the humans to thrive, or should we actually snuff them out? Because now Caesar,
I could see that.
Caesar would have been in a position where he actually has to fight, but he's still being, I guess, kind until.
Well, and that's why, but that's why it's really gray, right? Because it could be so easy to say Caesar represents only this and Koba represents, but really, we know Caesar has a dark side and Koba is capable of goodness. They're very complex characters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so again, the struggle, you get it, when Koba picks up the machine gun, you get it.
Which is another image that is
you get it.
That scene may be the best single scene in all three.
Which one?
When Koba swings the machine gun.
Yep. You lost.
And then he swings the machine gun. He's like, well, nope, it's me. That's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the look on his face after he kills the second guy, I feel like that's when I feel like at first he was I want to protect the community, but I feel like after he killed those two guys, it's oh no, I just love killing humans.
The way, the way it shows that shift, yes.
So one more thing, I think. Oh, I just want to say one more image when he sneaks up on the guy in the car. And he just kind of pops up and is in the dark.
And it's the cigarettes?
It's borderline horror now.
Yeah.
That strong of an image. But what's interesting in this movie, I think, is what actually starts the war and when does war actually start?
War starts when Koba is doing the actions. Because if Koba didn't get the guns, if Koba did not kill or attempt to kill Caesar, the power would have been on. They would have went back and told them, hey, the apes actually did all these things. They helped us. You don't need to stockpile all these weapons. We're straight.
I actually think it starts earlier.
No, so I don't. But where do you think it starts?
Yeah.
The first time that Caesar tries to shut Koba down, that is when I think they start going their separate paths, and that's when the seed is planted. Because then Koba gets the idea, I'm going to kill, I need to take Caesar out, right?
So
because they could have been two really strong leaders that complemented each other well. But instead, Caesar chose to go that more dominant route because maybe he figured that's all Koba will understand, right? Yeah. But in some way, he underestimates Koba in that moment, what he's capable of, and thinks that that's going to solve the problem. But it's not.
So I agree, I think. I don't know, but
it's hard to pinpoint.
This is what I think is so interesting about the movie is when does war start? Because they killed one of the apes' son in the very beginning.
No, they don't. They wounded him.
They wounded.
I thought they killed.
No, Ash just gets shot, but he
Koba actually kills the one he throws over. That's the one that was shot.
So it could have started right there, and Caesar said no. Caesar doesn't retaliate to cause a war.
Right.
And I was wondering if retaliation is when war really starts.
Oh, interesting.
Because you have the choice to not go to war, and Caesar doesn't. Koba wants to retaliate right away.
Yeah.
Even Caesar doesn't.
Even with that, he showed restraint to not even let the gorilla go. It's I just want to know how many humans are out there just.
Only when Koba retaliates is when war begins.
Right.
And I think that's a really awesome story to tell.
Yeah.
And then at the end, Caesar does the same thing to Koba, and he retaliates against Koba. And he, I don't know if we're there yet, but he should not have killed Koba.
Well, yeah. So let's go there because.
But I feel like that's the point,
and that could have been the next movie.
Yeah, that's yes. I feel like that's the downfall of Caesar. Caesar is now. He understands that apes are just like humans.
Yep.
So now it should have been. Now I'm haunted by that.
And he's just like them because he's strangling Koba.
Yep.
And he has to stop himself because he feels that same inner darkness that Koba has.
Yeah. Koba wouldn't have stopped. He would have tried to kill Caesar right there.
Look, you could have so if at the end Koba sneak attacks him one last time, that's what I thought was gonna happen. And then Koba and Caesar drops him and okay, you lose. But he says while they're fighting, Koba belongs in a cage, and right now he does, but Ape does not kill Ape.
Right. That's the moral code.
Caesar kills Koba. He murders Koba because he could have saved him in that moment, and he chose
the easy way out.
There's no redeemable nothing redeemable in Koba. He deemed right there, and I don't think that's what makes Caesar Caesar. And he acted against that, and it could have haunted him.
Yeah.
Have you ever acted against who you are?
Yeah, and it haunts me.
Yes, but that.
There's a lasting
but
effect.
not in such a relationship like Koba and Caesar. Like that's paramount to the series,
right?
And those are two great characters.
So that's like me if me and Dre fought.
Yeah,
but and then Koba shot him. Koba tried to kill him.
I know, and Caesar's taking revenge. And if Caesar's gonna be this Christ-like figure throughout the next movie, he wasn't that in that moment. And that's thrown away aside from like two little. Like flashbacks.
I think that's going on the whole movie in War, though, and it's only highlighted in those flashbacks. But I think that's always an underlying thing.
That moment where he drops him, "You are not Ape."
Yeah,
that is. So we talk about dehumanizing, right?
Yeah.
So when human beings will, in the name of like something as terrible as the Holocaust, you're lesser than, so we can get rid of you. You justify that, and I think that's what Caesar's doing is he's aping them, like you know what I mean, right? He's dehumanizing them, but as apes. So it's interesting that Caesar has to tell himself that,
or maybe even humanizing because he still sees the humans as lesser than him as well. So
no, the thing is, Koba was just killing apes. It didn't matter. He wasn't acting like an ape. He was acting like an animal.
Though. He was defeated.
He was.
Well, he saw him. He saw him as basically like this monster, like this beast, right?
I'm still thinking of his trauma. He experienced this trauma, this heavy trauma. He had to understand that he was abused. The formula made him understand that he was abused and things like that. And Caesar, his brother that saved him from that, I understand that Caesar made mistake. Like Koba made a big mistake. Koba went to war. Koba did all these things, but it was still based on a trauma that a brother was supposed to come in and help with, I feel like.
Well, it's that ethic, is anyone ever too far gone?
Yeah.
And Caesar in that moment said yes.
Yeah.
But he is too far gone.
And he was defeated, though. Like, it's such a great moment.
It is.
Because he was done.
Right.
And he knew it. And he didn't try to sneak attack. It was over. And then Caesar's took one step further.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends on his eyes.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Before you get to that, though. So he has this last conversation with Malcolm. And Malcolm and his family really represent the best of what's left of humanity, right? And so there's that emotional goodbye where Caesar's with Malcolm and he's like, you have to get out of here. You know, this is a war now.
Humans will not forgive.
Caesar is he says humans will never forgive, right? And that's the tricky thing, right? Is you see the lines are getting really blurry now because humans are descending into this beast-like state, which is, I think, what war is going to be about. And apes also, because of Caesar's actions and Koba's actions in different ways, their apes are now on that path. So that's what's interesting is that when Caesar kills Koba, you could think, or maybe he's telling himself that, okay, I just spared us, like going down that path. But in reality, he has set them on that path just in a different way than Koba set them on the path. That's what war is really going to explore is, can the apes rise above the path that Koba and Caesar put them on? And that's the question is, can humanity rise above it? And I think that that's what war is really going to get into.
So when he says that the humans will not forgive, it's not saying either one is not capable of it because one, Ash, who was the ape that got shot in the beginning, that was Rocket's son. Right. When there's the question of war, Rocket says, no, like, I follow Caesar.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to go to war. I understand. But so that capability is there.
Yeah.
In both of them. So I just wanted to address that.
Even Ash did not kill the human that Koba said to kill when they're in the stairway, and he gives him the, what is it, like the...
Like a lampstand to kill him with.
And he's like, go ahead and kill him. He's like, Caesar wouldn't want this. I'm not going to kill him.
And then Koba kills him.
Yeah, Koba kills him. Yeah.
Koba, weaker. The best line.
No, Caesar.
Caesar, weak.
Koba.
Weak. I was like, I laughed out loud because I think it was just so good.
Yeah.
And then I did want to bring up the part where Koba sees the humans working, or sees the apes working for the humans.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't know what's happening, but he just sees, and the image is so strong. Because I felt what Koba felt before they showed Koba's reaction.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh no. And then Koba lost it and went straight to Caesar.
Yeah.
Right.
Caesar.
I think those two characters are so strong.
Yeah.
And the conflict between them
Agreed.
is such an interesting story.
We'll pause it here, and then we will get into War for the Planet of the Apes and finish this trilogy off next week. Thank you for listening to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, produced by All Things Narrative. If you'd like to learn more about our coaching, workshops, events, please check out allthingsnarrative.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at All Things Narrative. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and tune in next time as we continue exploring the stories we love and the stories we live. Take care.